do this. Super fancy. So yeah, I'm just very excited to come on tonight. We've got a few people that came on live with us. And for those of you that are going to be watching this later, I've got Mark Skauge with us. I'm super excited to have Mark sharing with us specifically around what's going on in the real estate market in Calgary. He's got some neat perspectives that he'll share with us, as well as not too detailed, but we'll get into some of the numbers, right, Mark?
A few, yeah.
I think part of what I like the most on the investor focused real estate, so anybody who knows me, I probably fired more real estate agents than most people have ever worked with. And I'm pretty particular. And I think the reason is that when you're an investor, you're looking for something different. And I've had an amazing opportunity working with Mark certainly over this last year, and then working together with the Collaborate Real Estate Group. We're having the events, and to just have that fresh outlook of somebody who gets it and really wants to learn and understand what an investor needs, as opposed to the cookie cutter, nothing against other agents, but the cookie cutter standard first-time buyer, regular residential housing. So tonight is a super, super treat, Mark. Thank you so much for coming on. I'm going to do our framework a bit, and then I'm going to pass it over, but let me just give our agenda for the night, and we can get going from there. So I'll just get us open into our presentation really quickly here. And I should have had this open. Here we go. So again, just giving hopefully a good enough introduction about Mark. Mark will share more, and I'm sure have some great stories and information for everyone tonight. And then really what we're going to talk about is just what had been presented in our agenda. So kind of checked in. Let's really get into kind of what's driving today's real estate market. I'm really excited to hear about that. Like I said, we'll get into some market comparisons, but really, what does it mean for investors? And so I'm excited for those of you that are on live to really see what that might be for you. But I know that we created a poll ahead of time, and I saw that a few of you had a chance to answer, and some of you are thinking about selling your real estate. And I wonder what that will land. I know some of you liked the fact that the market has increased, but you're still holding. I'm really curious about keeping this conversation going. So that's the great value in having these things on Zoom. So we will have an opportunity to do those live Q&As. And yeah, honestly, I'm just, let's not get ahead of myself. I'm going to just stop the share and not get ahead of myself at all, and give this on over to Mark to just get us fired off.
All right. So yeah, thanks for having me, Laura. I appreciate it. My name is Mark Skauge. I'm a local realtor here. I have my license with RE/MAX First. And as Laura said, I do focus primarily on real estate investors, and also first-time home buyers is another area that I really like to work with. I find investors are interesting because they're strategic, and they see things that most people can't, and they see really good opportunities where most people just see problems. And I like working with first-time home buyers as well, because they're just genuinely excited. As far as selling properties and stuff like that, and listing properties, I don't actually even do that myself, but my wife is an excellent listing realtor, and I'll tell you a couple things about that later that are kind of interesting right now with the market the way that it is. But yeah, I love working with real estate investors. And one of the things that's interesting is because I only work with buyers, and mainly investors and first-time home buyers who are very cost conscious and typically, buying properties in that lower price point of the market. I'm dealing with the worst possible scenario right now for being a realtor. So the last couple of years, I've been in such a nice spot because all I'm doing is working with buyers. It's been a complete buyer's market. There's been tons of inventory, and we've been able to negotiate, better than usual. And then all of a sudden, start of this year, just about on New Year's Day, the market just shifted completely, just about instantly. And all of a sudden, the sellers are having a lot more fun than the buyers are right now. And they definitely got an advantage at the moment. But I think the big $1 million question right now is how long is that going to last? So yeah, this is an interesting conversation. It's funny, Laura and I know a couple of you guys probably heard me talk before at different events, and I can talk for days on different things. Laura and I, when we get going together for a 5-minute chat, it's usually about an hour and a half. So I've tried to segment a few specific things and examples to talk to you guys about tonight, and I'll try to stay as on topic as I can. But as Laura will rein me in, I'm sure, if I start going all over the place. But sometimes that's tough to do. So it's like catching a wild horse or something. So anyways, so I guess the first thing is I just want to give you guys kind of a high level overall explanation of what's happening in the market right now. In case you don't know, it's a pretty hot real estate market in Calgary right now. That's starting to become fairly common knowledge, and people are getting excited about that. What's kind of surprising is what's actually driving it. And then the real question is, how long is it going to last? And you know, is this the start of a big real estate boom, or is this just you know, a little bubble based on some unusual circumstances? So I've got my own thoughts on it, and realistically, time will tell, and we'll kind of see what happens. But there's some pretty interesting things happening right now. So just to give you an idea, just conceptually in simple terms, most houses right now, if they are marketed properly and priced reasonably well, are selling very quickly. A lot of properties are selling the first day that they're hitting the market. A lot of them are selling the first couple of days that they're hitting the market. Some of them literally aren't even making it to the first evening of showings before they're receiving offers. It's complete insanity in some situations right now. Even towns, this is really surprising. So I live in Airdrie. I do a lot of residential work in Airdrie on top of my investment stuff in Calgary. And because of being in Airdrie, I occasionally will work in some of the outskirt towns like Crossfield, Carstairs, Didsbury, etc. And I have one client in particular who's looking for a home out in Carstairs right now with some certain parameters. Hasn't been a lot of it coming up. One finally came up here about a month ago that just looked like a beauty. I reached out to the realtor. I reached out to my client immediately. I said, we better go see this fast. I know it's Carstairs, it's not Calgary, but things are still moving pretty quick. What do you think? They got back to me within about an hour and said, yeah, this looks amazing. We should go check it out. I reached out to the realtor immediately, and I got a text back saying it had already sold. It had been about 90 minutes, and they'd already accepted an offer. So I don't know how that happened. I didn't even bother asking. I just relayed the information and we moved on. But crazy things have been happening. So in Calgary, you know, because I work mainly with investors and first-time buyers, most of my clients are looking under 500,000, which is where most of the majority of the activity is happening, of course. And a lot of those properties are getting back-to-back showings. Just to give you kind of a high level here, they're getting back-to-back showings booked just about immediately after their listing. They're going into multiple offers and bidding wars a lot of the time on day one. A lot of properties are selling well over list price for sure. And people, you know, one of the things that this has created is people are panicking, especially first-time buyers. They're very emotional. And people are panicking and they're making bad decisions. And so we're seeing a lot of that. We're seeing a lot of people right now. I don't know how frequently it's happening, but I've seen it a few times myself recently where people are knee-jerk reactions, putting an offer in too quickly, negotiating, and then the next day wondering, wow, what happened last night? We bought a house. And then they're getting cold feet and backing out of deals. So that's happening a little bit more frequently now. And nobody's usually particularly upset about it because they've got another offer already on the table. So it's been really a strange environment to work in. But right now, just a couple things I want to touch on before just so I don't forget. So it definitely is a seller's market right now. So if anybody's thinking of selling a property, this currently at this exact moment in time is still an excellent time to sell a property. But it is still important that you market it effectively, that you take great photos, and that you price it appropriately. Because one of the things that's happened is as the market's really heated up over the last 6 months here, we're seeing some really ridiculous stuff hitting the market. Properties are coming out that are listed way over where they should be. And it's just people are just completely out to lunch. And that's causing some problems, right? And so it's really important, and this is a conversation we're having regularly lately, especially with first-time home buyers, is it doesn't matter what a house is listed for, it matters what it's worth. And that's something that people really need to pay attention to right now, because I've had clients recently, even I have really good investor clients that have bought multiple properties with me, really smart people, and they've come in. My screen suddenly switched over to Phil. Can you you guys still see me okay?
Yeah, we're fixed.
Okay. So I've had a client here recently, just for example, buy a lot of detached homes out in Airdrie, and a house came up, and let's say it was, I don't remember the exact price of this one, but let's say it was $400,000 was the list price. Without even hearing comparables, they said, maybe we should offer 415 or 420, and we hadn't even run comps yet. So people need to be careful right now on the buying side, that they're not just taking knee-jerk reactions, and they're actually doing their research thoroughly through their realtors. And another thing, just because I don't want to forget this because it's important, is when you get into these bidding war situations, it's also important that the properties still need to appraise with the banks and the lenders. And so we've seen situations where we get into these bidding wars and people go crazy with their offers so they can beat out the other 4 people or 5 people on the table. But you end up in a situation where either, if the property is worth 400,000 and you agree to a deal at 420, and then the bank comes in and they say it's only worth 400, there's a gap there that needs to be filled. And so you either end up, the buyer needs to put up another 20,000 cash, which they often don't want to do or aren't prepared to do, or the seller's sitting there and they think, wow, we had this great offer at 420, but these guys can't actually close on it. So there's different ways that that's playing out. Sometimes you end up, meeting in the middle, and the buyers come up with a little bit more cash, and the sellers don't get quite the same price that they wanted. But that's a real factor that's happening a lot here lately. Is appraisals are actually, a very, very important part of the process right now, because people are overpaying and doing crazy stuff. And the reality is, some things are not appraising as high as they should, and some are appraising for way more than they should. My wife had a listing out in Airdrie here that sold to an Ontario buyer who was buying remotely through video, and it went $50,000 over list price in a very kind of average area in Airdrie. It was way overpriced, and she just said to the realtor right up front, like, there's no way this is going to appraise. Are you guys prepared for that? Do you have a plan? And it appraised. It was insane. So so there's a lot of weird stuff going on right now. Everybody's been kind of on their heels and needing to react very quickly to everything, and so some of it's kind of just been go with the flow and put an offer in and see what happens. So do you have any thoughts or things on that, Laura, before I talk for 2 hours here straight?
Right. Well, I mean, all of that, I just seeing that is probably something we try to do in our groups as well. It's just, how do we work with people to make sure that they're not making those knee-jerk reactions? And I mean, I do a ton on cash flows. So if you're buying that property at the wrong price, is that going to actually meet the goals that you want? And it's pretty quick in the heat of the moment to forget what your goals are. So I really,
absolutely, yeah.
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 I was curious on just globally, some of the details, even on like, what do you think kind of happened in January? What do you think, like, what were some of the factors that you think created or might have come to that?
Yes. So this is a conversation, as we mentioned earlier, I've been having this conversation every day lately with somebody, because it just comes up, right? Because it's such a strange, unexpected sequence of events that's happened here. So 15, 16 months ago, the whole world just shut down because of COVID, and it just happened instantly overnight. Nobody could have saw that coming or planned accordingly for it. It was just such a shock to the system. The first 2 months that happened, I mean, real estate, I think it was probably just about 2 months. Real estate just died. It just stopped instantly. My wife and I are both realtors, so that was a really fun couple of months. No panic set in there at all, just in case anybody's wondering. We avoided all that completely, or maybe we didn't. But anyways, real estate just stopped. It just died. And really shockingly, over a couple of months there, the world started to get, I think, more and more freaked out about COVID. There started to be more and more lockdowns. Things started to go just really scary and concerning from so many different directions, economically and otherwise, for everybody. And to everybody's shock, I think it was around late May that houses started to sell again. And Then June started to happen and more houses started to sell. And then things started to go crazy and realtors started to run around busier than they've been in forever. And it was really bizarre. So the fact that any houses changed hands last year kind of surprised me. But it was healthy sales throughout most of the year. But as of January this year, so all of last year, we're still very much in a buyer's market. Tons of inventory, usually lots of room to negotiate. Properties were sitting on the market for, sometimes extended periods of time, even some really good properties. Properties over 600,000, like the 600 to 900,000 part of the market, wasn't getting a lot of love for the last few years here for multiple reasons, directly tied to the economy. And anyways, it was strange because that's the condition we were in for a long period of time here. And then January, it was like somebody hit a light switch and all of a sudden things started to go crazy. And what was really interesting is houses started to sell really fast and bidding wars started to happen and inventory levels started to drop like a rock. They just started to just tank and dive. And it was really interesting because we were all having our own conversations amongst each other, realtors, investors, everybody else, and saying, what in the world is going on here? This doesn't make any sense. And what was really interesting to watch is we get, monthly updates from the Calgary Real Estate Board, the Alberta Real Estate Association, the Canadian Real Estate Association. And it was funny because we started to get these updates saying the markets are going crazy, everything's going nuts, but we can't explain it either. They're like, we don't have any logical explanation for this, but it's happening. Here's the stats. And then there's sales records happening all over the place. And compared to last year, things were going absolutely insane. And it was happening all across the country with no explanation. And that went on for probably, I would say, through March, at least, maybe even coming into April. And then a theory started to arise. And then there must have been some research that started to back that up, because ironically, the big reason that things seem to be booming right now in real estate is actually because of COVID. And I know some articles came out earlier in the year talking about the lifestyle changes and people wanted to move from apartment style condos, for example, out to a place that had a little bit more space because of, they had home offices now and stuff like that. And that was all kind of an interesting theory, but it still didn't make a lot of sense to me and to anybody else I talked to, just because financially the world's shut down, businesses are shut down. A lot of people are getting just hammered financially right now, and real estate's just booming. And so what came out is that a lot of people, because of COVID, as long as they've stayed employed, their income has stayed there. They've continued to bring in this money, but they haven't had anywhere to spend it. And so they haven't been able to go out to restaurants for dinner. They haven't been able to go on vacations. They haven't been able to go out to hockey games and concerts and all this sort of fun stuff that we all like to do, and nobody's been able to do it for 15 months. So if you imagine just a simple example, these numbers will change household to household, but if you take a husband and wife and a couple of kids, if you go out once a week for a dinner at a half decent restaurant, you could easily spend $125 a dinner, right? You get dinners, a couple appetizers, a couple of drinks, $125 easy. So if you did that once a week, hypothetically, that's $500 a month. Well, over a year, that's $6,000, right? And then you take one family vacation. A family of four could easily spend $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 on a vacation, easy. Never mind the fact they might take a couple, right? And then you take the hockey games and the concerts and kids' activities and sports, like all this stuff is just taken out of the picture. And what's happened is people have accidentally saved $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 or more because they haven't been able to spend it. So you have this lifestyle shift where people are working from home and need home offices and stepping over each other to make it happen. They're homeschooling kids. They're saying, we can't deal with this. We've got to get more space. Interest rates are low. We've got all this cash. Let's make a move. And it just started happening step by step by step. And all of a sudden the market's on fire. It's been crazy. So that's ironically, it's actually people saving money through COVID that is apparently one of the biggest factors for this boom right now.
Wow. And I just thinking about that, obviously, you know, I have some of my background where I do the budgets and boring, and I've never once considered, but you know, that's one of the reasons why people will never want to talk about budgeting, is because the first thing everybody thinks about is that you're pinching and you can't go out for dinner, you can't do anything. And so, you know, what an interesting positive from the experience we've just had in a pandemic, that it actually forced some savings, which would be good for a lot of Canadians, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, totally unexpected consequence of this whole circus that we've been in for the last 15 months. It's been unbelievable.
Wow.
Yeah, and you know, I spoke today with one of my top mortgage brokers that I work with, Christy, who you know, and she's been just flat out since the start of the year, like just absolutely flat out, as a lot of mortgage brokers are, and they're just, you know, lenders have been backed up. It's been just a crazy environment. I've never talked to more people in the industry, realtors, mortgage brokers, home inspectors, just absolutely burnt out. Like they'd never seen it so crazy, right? But what was really interesting is she said to me that since the start of January, the majority of her deals that she's been involved with, and she does a lot of deals, she funds a lot of purchases, the majority, not just a couple or a few, but the majority have been directly COVID related, which I find fascinating. So that's a pretty interesting little twist there. So yeah, so that's actually been a big factor. Now, what else did I want to mention to you guys here? I got a few. I think. What else do you want to jump in with there, Laura? Do you have any thoughts you want to add to that, or?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I just think, you know, that whole piece of looking at different ways. I know the interesting side from an investor piece, and I don't know if you'll get into this a bit later, but I've been hearing, and even I'd say on the rental market, so rents are up on average across the board. We're seeing increases in the rents. Particular styles of properties are going, I'm finding, really quickly. So anything with a single family home, you know, I do a lot in the suites for cash flow side, but the single family homes is like full on bidding wars in on the rental side. And I haven't seen that since probably like 2014. Like how long have we've been low for a while in the rental market. So what's curious.
What do you attribute that to? Do you have any theories on why that's happening right now?
Well, it's interesting because, and this is what I'm wondering and waiting to see if we had a crystal ball to see what's going to happen in the next couple of months, because the amount of tenants that I'm speaking to that are advising me that their landlord is selling. And that's literally the story that I'm hearing over and over and over again.
Wow.
Hundreds
Interesting.
of people that their landlord.
Really?
So if they're all moving out and these additional properties are going to hit the market in the next month, or two, like some of them, you got to think they're giving notice. Some of them had leases ending. Some of them had to give 90 days notice. So, you know, I'm kind of on this end of it, and so many are potentially selling. Then on the rental side, people are having almost an impossible time, especially the family that wants a whole house. Maybe they have a dog, you know, that's my niche in pet friendly, are literally clamming and bidding war, paying more money to rent that place. So I'm very curious to see what that's going to bring when all those other ones hit the market. What are your thoughts around that?
That's very interesting. I've been meaning to ask you actually why the rents have been going up, because I noticed that they have been with some of our mutual clients there for sure. So yeah, I'll show some stats later here, but I'll just address that right now to some degree. So what's interesting, so my wife is a very, very talented realtor. She's been in the business about 10 years. She's a high performer, award-winning realtor. She's a killer. And what's interesting is a couple of years ago, not last year, because last year things started to move with COVID. It was bizarre, but the year prior to that and the one before that, so I guess probably 2018, 2019, it's interesting. So her and her business partner, normally when they go into a listing presentation with a client, it's very unusual that they leave that meeting without listing that property, because they have a great track record. They've got great systems, great marketing, everything else. It's extremely rare that they go into those meetings, even if there's 2 or 3 realtors kind of competing for it, and that they don't actually get the listing. And what was interesting is 2018, 2019, there was a whole bunch of meetings that they had where they didn't get the listing. It wasn't because of them or because of another realtor. It was because those people, once they got a reality check of what their property is actually worth right now, it's not what they thought it was worth, it's not even close. And they said, oh God, and they were deflated, right? And they say, you know, we can't afford to sell right now, or if it's that bad, we'll wait, you know, and we'll just ride this out. And so that was a couple of years ago. And so what's interesting is, as soon as this trend started here in January, so back to my earlier comments about me just working with buyers, this January and February and March in particular was savage to be a buyer's agent realtor. It was brutal, because what was happening is properties would hit the market and you literally had to go that day. So first off, you had to beat everybody else to even booking a showing to go in and see that property. You had to get in there that day, and you better be writing an offer that night, likely in a competing offer situation, or you're not even in the game. And so people would come in, and so not only did they, I mean, especially for first-time buyers, it's been a terrible environment, because they had to make just knee-jerk reactions. They're looking to buy their first house. You're in there for 20 minutes, and it's like, okay, let's go spend 400 grand, right? And that's nerve-wracking. They literally couldn't even sleep on it, right? So this is a problem. And so that was the environment. Well, what happened is, back to these people that didn't sell their houses a couple of years ago, they started to hear these stories, right? And they started to hear that the market was heating up. And I predicted this, and it's no, you know, amazing prediction, but it's played out exactly the way that I said it was going to. But all of a sudden, there's all these people in the background that are going, wow, we wanted to sell our house before. Maybe this is a good time. Maybe we should start looking at that. So just like you said, right? So those are starting to hit the market. And you also said something else that's bang on, and I want to touch on tonight as well. Is so a couple of things. One is January, February, March. A lot of the realtors, I mean, I know a lot of high performing realtors, and they said, like, this is not going to last. Like, if you want to capitalize on this, do it now, because this is not going to last. And that was the consistent conversation for about 4 months. Once we got through April, people were going, well, maybe it will. I don't know, like, what's going to happen, right? But what happened is I guarantee you, between January, February, March, even from some conversations I had with people, they said, I don't think this is going to last. I think it's just a little bubble. I don't want to have a knee-jerk reaction just because there's a little bit of activity in the market right now. So they didn't want to run out and get their house ready and list their house and uproot their life and their kids and everything else on a knee-jerk reaction. So some of them were pausing and waiting and evaluating what was going to happen. Okay. So that, you take that for 2 or 3 months at the start of the year, and then you hit our spring market, which normally March, April, May, June, where inventory usually picks up significantly anyways. And you've already got this buzz now of a hot market. And so now you've got our normal set of people starting to roll out their properties and list them, right? And then you got these people on the back burner that have been procrastinating and thinking about it and evaluating. Well, they're starting to list now. But the other thing is happening, and you touched on it, is a lot of people, just because they want to sell their house doesn't mean they can sell it today, right? So if you have tenants in there and you've got a lease wrapping up in a couple of months, you probably want to just let that run its course, do any repairs that are necessary, and then sell it. It's way easier to sell a vacant property than it is to sell one with tenants, right? We know that. So those people have a delay. You've got people that are maybe waiting until their kids are out of school. You've got people that, they realistically, even if they decided today they want to sell their house, it's still going to take them 6 or 8 weeks to get it ready, because they've got to declutter and get rid of a bunch of stuff and paint and move this and move that, right? So you have all these different factors at play. So my gut feeling, and we'll look at some stats here in a minute, but my gut feeling is that there's still a wave of inventory coming that's been a delayed reaction. And I hope that's the case, because I'm hoping it'll level the market off a little bit, because it's been a really weird environment. It's been tough for investors to negotiate. But yeah, if for people that are thinking of selling, there's still a window of opportunity here. If it's done well, it still needs to be marketed well. And on the buying side of things, just to be clear, we've picked up some great properties lately too, including for our investor clients. We found some good deals. Some of the things we've been watching for, sometimes things just miss the mark with their price. We bought one here recently. It went into multiple offers. We went in aggressively, and we had a strategy around that I won't get into on the video here, but we had an aggressive strategy, and it worked. But the property was listed $25,000 below where it should have been. So we still were able to capitalize on that, go in way over list, and still have a strategy that was successful in all respects, right? We had another property recently that just wasn't marketed nearly as well as it should have been. The photos weren't nearly up to par. I'm not sure if the realtors were just maybe being lazy or being cheap and didn't want to spend the money because the market's so hot. I'm not sure, but I guarantee you, if my wife would have listed that property, it would have been sold on day one with 5 offers, right? Just she's going to pay attention to those details. So, but I think there are opportunities out there for buyers still, but I really believe there's a wave of inventory coming right now that's in the works, and I'm hoping it's going to surpass the demand so that things can level off a little bit here for our investor clients. So that's kind of my thought on it. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm hearing about the wave because I've got the tenants that are looking for the places now, and that's all I've been here, and that's the most that's the most I've ever heard. Like, in my experience, I've never had this much flooding, this much amount, and then people saying the exact same thing. And a lot of these,
that's amazing.
The timing you shared too, because a lot of these, they've lived in these houses for 4 years, so they're longer term tenants, families, they're stressed out. So I wonder also what that'll do in pushing some of those tenants to become owners sooner. Because without having a lot of opportunity, they may actually look at their ability to buy. So that whole side of how the market hits, how much, and if there's not enough rentals, then maybe we get more buyers there.
It's going to be interesting to watch because there's been so many curveballs here that people weren't expecting. Yeah, we'll see. So what do you think? Should we jump into some of these stats here?
I think people are ready for stats. So
okay.
I'm going to share the screen again and get us in. And we'll jump into the stats side. So, and hopefully everybody can see well enough, and you can help kind of explain this to us and let me know when to go on to the next page.
Sounds good. And Laura's helping me out on the technical side here because I'm not too technical on this stuff, and I was going to crash the whole system here. So, just really quick snapshot here from the Calgary Real Estate Board. So, overall average in Calgary year over year, detached prices are up. Go back there, Laura, please.
Oh, sorry, that's me clicking. That's not helpful. There you go.
Detached home prices are up 12.2%. Semi-detached duplexes typically are up 9.9%. Rows, which would be your townhouses, are up 7.9%, and even apartment style condos are up 4.9%. So everything's moved up here in the last year, which is interesting. Now, for me, I don't look at that one stat overall and start making decisions on it. Obviously, like I said earlier, you want to make sure you're doing your due diligence and your research on what you're actually targeting. So for, luxury properties, for example, to push some prices up overall, that's not something that's really going to be directly applicable to investors in most situations, right? So I had one thing I wanted to mention on that. Oh yeah, so just an interesting stat, so don't forget. The last 2, 3, 4 years, I'm not sure the exact time frame or the exact stats on it, but overall the market, the detached housing market in Calgary, for price between 600,000 and 900,000, kind of mid to upper price point, has been pretty slow overall. There hasn't been a ton of activity though, and the logic behind it, what I'm hearing about it anyways, because I don't work a lot in that area, is that a lot of the middle management jobs, a lot of the oil and gas jobs have been either temporarily or permanently eliminated, which is where a lot of those buyers were coming from. Obviously, we're 7 years into a downturn here in Calgary. It's been a rough ride for a lot of people, and a lot of people have had to make some lifestyle adjustments. A lot of the full-time jobs have come back, but they're not in oil and gas, and they're not paying the same as oil and gas. So a lot of people that were in those $600,000, $700,000, $900,000 houses have shifted over to a $500,000 house, right? Which is one of the things that's put more and more pressure on that part of the market. The whole economy is just shifted and adjusted here, right? But interesting enough, I believe it was last month, it might have been last quarter, but I think it was last month. The stats were something like 27 to 29% of all of the sales in Calgary, keeping in mind the huge volume of sales we've had, were above $600,000. So that to me, for one thing, I just find it really interesting, but I also think that it might show some confidence that things are going to get better here at some point in time. So I found that to be a very, very interesting stat, that suddenly things above 600,000 are moving. So if you don't mind jumping to that next slide there, Laura.
All right.
So this is from the Calgary Real Estate Board. So this is these are the sales, year-to-date sales for 2018, 2019, 2020, and 2021. And the red lines there, that's the volume of sales in that price point for this year. So you can see that it spiked significantly in all categories. Even the million plus category sales have picked up. 700 to a million has picked up significantly. 400 to 500, 500 to 600, obviously big parts of the market there. But everything has spiked, which is really interesting. So that, again, is the big question, is have things really turned now? Or is this just a one-time, one-off shot because of COVID money and COVID savings? That's really a good question right now. I don't have a perfect answer for it, but it's a pretty interesting question. So I know a big conversation within our real estate investor community the last couple of years has been whether or not we've hit bottom yet. And people were, I guess, two-sided conversation. One side was you could wait a little bit longer and wait for some kind of a signal for it to go up. I know your stance always, Laura, is if the numbers work, do it anyways. So it's been a little bit of both. But the big question has been, have we hit bottom? We must be close. So as of January, things have started to pick up here, and a lot of people have started to pull the trigger on investment properties. I'm getting more calls from Ontario lately because they think bottom is hit. And it might be time to invest in Calgary because it's a good long-term opportunity. But then you start bringing in these COVID factors, and the question is still, has anything actually fundamentally changed in our economy, which I don't believe that it has. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. Pretty interesting kind of worms you're dealing with here. Do you want to maybe hit that next slide there, Laura?
Absolutely.
So just to give you some kind of hard numbers to take a look at here. If you just look at the average price of a detached home, and you see at the bottom there, I put detached with a living area of 1,000 to 2,000 square feet. Just to let you guys know, the reason I did that is I wanted to eliminate really large homes, luxury homes, or really small properties, and kind of focus on the probably more applicable part of the market for most of our investors. But if you look from 2020 to 2021, there's a pretty good increase there, right? January 417 up to 440, then you go 435 up to 464. In May 430 up to 472. These are pretty good jumps, right, for a very short period of time. But what's going to happen next is the big question, right? So if you hit the next slide there, Laura, please. So this is the one that really got my interest when I started looking into this a little bit more carefully. So in the green is your average list price, and in the blue is your average days to sell, or days on market. I always like to look at days on market. I think it's an interesting stat. So if you look at the list price, the green across the board there, it's fluctuating a little bit on average, and this is for all detached homes in Calgary. So you've got a lot to work with there. But if you look at the overall trend here, your prices have crept up a little bit, definitely over the last year and a half, or last year here. But if you look at the blue on the days to sell, you'll see back to June or July of last year through until January, took a lot more days to sell, around that 45 to 50 mark. And then February, March, April start to really drop off. But what I like to see here as an investor realtor is it's starting to turn back the other way, and days on market is starting to increase a little bit. And what that means is people are still out running around having bidding wars. Believe me, we're dealing with it every day. But maybe, possibly, the tides might start to turn here. I don't know. It's tough to say for sure. I was at a showing in South Calgary the other day for a suited property. down by Fish Creek Park. And it was a nice enough property. The basement suite was amazing. The upper floor was quite small. The yard was okay. Like it was fine. It had some features. It was booked so solid. There was back-to-back showings every 30 minutes from dawn till dusk. I had another realtor when we had our showing booked. There was another realtor there that came by just to see if he could jump in between showings for 10 minutes because he literally couldn't book a showing. There was that many people that wanted to see it. And another thing that we're seeing right now too is that property was listed, I believe, on Friday with no intention of reviewing offers until Sunday evening. So that's something that we're seeing a lot right now too, is the weekend is normally the busiest. So people are rolling there on Friday and just assuming that they're going to get multiple offers on Sunday. So they'll stack up the showings and stack up the offers. And it's a great strategy. It's been working really well. The question is, how long is this going to persist, right? So I like the direction that this curve is starting to show at the end of this graph. We'll see what happens. If you hit the next slide there, please, Laura. So this one here, again, days to sell. And this is for, so this one's a little bit different stat. At the bottom, you'll see there it's detached homes in Calgary priced up to $450,000. So again, I wanted to focus on kind of our more generally targeted part of the market here for investors. And I love that curve at the end of this graph because as soon as things start to sit on the market a little bit longer, we get to negotiate a little bit better. And one of the things that's been really frustrating this year as a buying realtor is you come into these situation, whether it's with an investor or with a first-time buyer. In my case, there's two main clients, and it's almost always been a bidding war. So it's not a question of how much can we negotiate off of the list price. It's a question of how much above list price do we have to go to get this property, which is not a fun way to start a negotiation. So the longer property is starting to sit, the better the chances are. We've wrote offers on some properties here recently that we weren't in a competing offer situation, and it's like our lucky day, or it feels that way. So I'm hoping we have a lot more of that coming. But that curve at the end of this graph is really interesting, and I hope that it continues that way moving forward for the sake of the buyers. And Laura, if you don't mind hitting that last slide there, please. So this one here is from January of 2020 until May of 2021. In the green is the closing price for the sales. And in the blue, it's the active number of listings. Now, what I want to highlight here is you'll see around probably December of 2020, you'll see that prices start to dip a bit. Listings drop down to their lowest level. Well, as soon as you have less inventory, everything runs on supply and demand. Normally, you'd think prices are going to start to go up. So if you look at the green line at the top, prices start to creep up a little bit, and they start to gradually trend that direction as expected. But then you'll see they start to slope downwards a little bit. And what you'll see over that same period of time is when active listings hit their lowest level around just before January of 2021, new listings started to hit the market, right? People started to get excited. Market's getting tight. There's not a lot of inventory out there. This is our opportunity to sell. This is our time, right? And they start listing their properties. Well, as those listings start to increase, sales have increased along with this. Coincidentally, they've been kind of just chasing each other up. But what's interesting here is as you see those listings start to climb, you also see the price starting to just slightly start to trend down. Now, whether or not this is just a lucky shot for this month and things continue to climb, we'll see. But logically speaking, if there's a whole flood of inventory coming here over the next 2 to 3 months, and a lot of this buying activity is directly related to COVID, it'll be interesting to see how this all shakes out. There's other factors at play too. New stress tests rolled out here effective June 1st, which has decreased people's buying abilities a little bit. Last time that happened, it made a huge impact on the market very quickly. And a lot of people are looking for that, $380,000 home. Well, all of a sudden, if they can only afford $350,000, they can't buy a house anymore. So for a lot of situations, not where they want to buy, right? So people are the stress test is pushing people out of the part of the market they want to be in, and so that's going to be an impact here as well. So, but this trend that we're looking at on this last slide here is interesting, because you can see those two kind of pointing towards each other at the end. And if listings continue to go up, in theory, prices should start to go down a little bit, or at least level off. How that actually plays out is anybody's guess. So yeah, that's what I got for stats at the moment, Laura. So what do you think about all that?
I think this is amazing. And I know most of us that are on live have a bunch of questions. So I'm glad you all have some time for some Q&A. But what we'll do is we'll just kind of finish out this bit for the recording and for those that are going to be watching later. So I wanted to make sure that everyone has Mark's contact information. Definitely wanted to speak to, keeping this conversation going. We've got some polls that I've been putting out on what people are thinking about on what's happening. I know Mark and I are both open to, send us an email, definitely looking at wanting to be able to help people. Mark, share a little bit maybe here about, what you might be looking for in support for a client.
In support for client from you, or what do you mean?
No, as far as, any clients that might be interested, like what's kind of ideal, what would be a good referral for you?
I love working with anybody interested in either cash flowing properties or even long-term equity properties. One thing I have learned over the last couple of years here, particularly, I know Laura, you've got a great model and it works really well for a lot of our mutual clients, and there's other people that have different models too. They just want to do something a little bit more conservative, like buy a townhome or buy a single detached house, something like that. And there's nothing wrong with that strategy either. Everybody's a little bit different. So I love working with brand new investors. That's certainly a lot of fun. And I also have a lot of more veteran clients too that have big portfolios and they just want to keep growing them for one reason or another. Need a new realtor on their team. So I'm open to having conversations with anybody that wants to talk about real estate, really. So, and first time buyers, of course, it's always fun. It's been a bit of a battleground here lately, but if you know anybody who's thinking about buying their first home, I always love having those conversations. Those are always really fun as well. So.
Well, and I love that full cycle piece, because I know for me, and what I kind of shared at the beginning is the value of having someone who I think it's really, it's the passion. It's someone who cares. So I think you had mentioned earlier on about the excitement. So, it's an excitement of rather it's a first time buyer or a new investor or a veteran investor of it being the right property for them. And having that buyer focus is something that I know I really see a difference in. You always really try to find out exactly what I'm looking for and want to know if you send me something, if it's not the right one, then why, so that you can refine your search. And I just honestly have to say, I've never had that experience before with a realtor that really paid attention to what I was looking for. And so I strongly recommend anyone who's interested in buying real estate to definitely reach out to Mark. I'm going to just close this part, obviously, just reminding anybody on here that hasn't met me, that obviously I am the founder of the YYC Rental Housing Providers Group. Here, I run our company, my husband and myself, under Efficient Property Assistance, and we provide specific services to real estate investors. So we want to make sure that you're successful. That's what I love about having someone like Mark on our team as well. Is basically just working. I do the coaching on cash flow. We do support on, unfortunately, rescue my rental if somebody's in trouble, or some help for starting up my rental. We're not property managers, so certainly you want to be able to have that on your team. But for those that are looking for some extra support services, maybe you want to learn to do it yourself and have a little bit of help, that's definitely where we come in. And of course, we go all the way to the full joint venture structures as well, which have been very successful for a lot of people to build that cash flow while reducing risk. So that's a little bit about me as well. We're going to close off the recording part and go on to our live Q&A here for a few minutes for those that are here, and make sure if you can attend next time live. I think you'll find a big difference, because I'm really excited about this next part of this conversation. But we'll leave that for everybody for here. And thanks so much for watching.